I made a lot of, countless memorable trips with Jimmy Martin and the Sunny Mountain Boys throughout the years that I knew Jimmy. But this was a pretty good one. We were on our way to the Berkshire Mountains in New York, a real big festival, and one you can still see a good bit of footage on YouTube from that particular festival. But it started out, Charlie Klein, very famous fiddle player that was playing with Jimmy at the time, he was driving the bus, and in the middle of the night, probably just hours before we made it to New York, or to the festival grounds, in the middle of the night, sounded like a gunshot went off in the bus. Come to find out, Charlie was kind of dozing off and had hit a construction barrel, and it hit the door, and we didn't know what it had done to the door, but when we pulled up to the festival grounds, and there was about 6 to 8, 12, etc. Japanese fans that were hanging outside the door waiting for Jimmy to get out of the bus. And and Charlie was trying to open the door, and it wouldn't open. Evidently, that barrel had jammed it. And Jimmy was said, "What's wrong, Charlie?" And he said, "What's the problem?" Charlie said, "What? The door won't open, Jimmy." And Jimmy said, "Oh, hell," and he grabbed it, and he started messing with it, and it wouldn't open. It was jammed somehow. And Charlie kept trying to mess with it, and and they couldn't get it open, and you could hear the Japanese outside. They were saying, "Jimmy Marty trapped on bus. Jimmy Marty trapped on bus." And they were trying to open the door, and one little guy had his fingers inside of the door trying to pull it open, and Jimmy was always in his own world, and he didn't notice, or I don't know if he cared, but he didn't notice that little guy's fingers was in there, and he was and they were saying, "Chop, chop, chop," and he said, "Oh, Jimmy Marty trapped on bus. We help Jimmy Marty." And right about that time, Jimmy said, "Well, hell, I'll get it open." And he says, "Move out of the damn way," and he kicked that door just as hard as he could kick it, and smashed that poor guy's fingers all to pieces. And the guy was, "Oh," and Jimmy just walked right off outside and didn't even really acknowledge him, and walked out into the grounds. Well, that was the beginning of our stay there, and it went from there. Now, I met a lot of great friends, ironically, on this trip. I met Peter Rowan there for the first time, and I met a number of people. I met Tony Rice for the first time at the Berkshire Mountains. He actually played with Jimmy on stage that weekend. And I was told by Harley Allen that, we didn't officially meet this particular weekend, but Harley told me that he remembers it was the first time that he had ever seen me. And he told me a few years later, he said, I wondered. He said, I saw you walking around that festival and thought, who in the world is that kid traveling with Jimmy Martin? What is his story? But anyway, come the closer was when the festival was at an end, or our time there, and Jimmy was wanting to pull out. The promoter claimed she didn't have any money to pay him. And come to find out, there wasn't any money to pay anybody. And it started getting kind of hairy around there, and things started to get, a little, the word was getting out, and a bunch of musicians and artists started piling up, kind of talking about it, wondering what they were going to do about it. And Jimmy started raising quite a stink. And he had everybody crowding around, and he was really cussing and really putting it on this woman promoter, and saying some things that weren't too flattering to her, and that I won't repeat on this tape, but you can imagine. And so poor old John Duffy from the Seldom Scene walked up to Jimmy and said, "Now, Jimmy, now let's just calm down. Let's try to let's work. This'll work out. We'll work it out. Things will be all right. There's no reason to cause a problem here." And Jimmy, the top of Jimmy's head came up to about John's chest, and Jimmy took his fingers and hit John in the chest about as hard as he could hit him, flip him, and looked and said, "Fuck you, John. I want my fucking money." And John just kind of shook his head and said, "Oh, here we go." And then someone, I don't remember who, yelled out and said, "Jimmy, they just called the police." And Jimmy'd been down that road before, so he immediately yelled at everybody and said, "Come on, let's go." And we just all piled in the bus and took off. And we actually passed the police car as it was coming in to the festival grounds. And we headed out. We never, as far as I know, Jimmy never got paid for that festival. I'm sure it wasn't the first time, but it was a memorable one. And but I have to say, we had a good time, and I met some real profound friends that trip.